Joining me right now is the host of Josh Pate's college football show. It's outstanding. You can find it right here on YouTube. Now an ESPN contributor. You can also catch him Fridays on Bussin' and Pate on Campus. One of the leading voices across this great nation when it comes to college football, the one, the only, my guy, Josh Pate. Josh, welcome to Schein Time.
I'm shining for you. I mean, look, I came dressed and ready to go as only I can. How you been, man?
I've been great, man. It's been a minute. It's good to catch up with you. I'm just thrilled for your success. I'm not surprised in any way, shape, or form. And listen, if I had my votes, you would be the commissioner of college football. And love your show, love watching you on ESPN. I can't wait to chop it up with you. And before we get into the action on the field, look, this week has been filled with nonsense and court rulings and conferences banning players from returning to the college ranks. Lane Kiffin, as is often the case, finds himself at the center of it. How do you see this playing out? What's your all-encompassing take on dae'quan rights and others when it comes to college football?
Yeah, I was a little bit different on this. I noticed when the story started to break, everyone, started to point a finger towards maybe the players or maybe Lane Kiffin. And he wasn't the only coach, but he was the face of it all. I don't know. I just looked past all that. Not that I didn't feel that in my core like the rest of the free-thinking world did, but I was angry beyond that. Like Lane Kiffin, not to carry water for the guy, but I have no expectation for competitors not to pursue every possible competitive edge just because they adhere to some societal moral code. I don't count on them to do that. So I have no expectation of that. So I'm not disappointed when someone tries to bend the rules. The optimum word there, of course, is rule. In a normal world, in a normal sport, we have well-defined rules.
Yep.
If you take steroids, for instance, that's against the rules. You pursued an edge, it's against the rules, you get popped. Well, in college football, when we try and enforce rules, it turns out it's illegal. And so it gets tried in a court of law. And so, right now, you've got leagues trying to work around court rulings to essentially scare their member institutions straight, which I don't fault them for. Because in lieu of being able to enforce rules, that's probably what I would do if I was the SEC or Big Ten commissioner. But I look beyond a face of it. I looked at the overall systemic problem that is a long way from being solved.
I want to get into the games and some storylines, and I love your take on how we need to have rules here, no question about it. Let's get to the most relevant game, week 0. Bill Belichick and North Carolina, they're going to kick off year 2 against TCU in Ireland, which is all sorts of cool. Look, Belichick. I think he's the greatest coach in the history of the National Football League. Shame on me. I thought he was going to be really good to great last year. Is he going to make it through the season? Make it past this season? Any expectations for Belichick at UNC this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna warn you now. I'm gonna ask you a question in about 20 seconds.
Okay.
So prepare for it. No, I don't think he'll make it through the season. It's what it feels like to me. I feel like a lot of the process that went into hiring him was really backwards. It was quintessential college football in a way because you had dual coaching searches going on. But what I wanted to ask you to tee this up is you said you had high expectations. You thought he would win. I didn't think he would win. I had my reasons. I want to know what your reasons were for thinking he would succeed.
Because what he did in the pros, where he would take a roster that was good and make it great. He would take a roster that was great and turn it into a championship team. I think, Josh, he always had that special gift of putting guys in the right position to be successful. His X's and O's were better than everyone else's. The way he would teach, the way he would motivate. So I wasn't saying championship. I wasn't saying top 2 or 3 in the ACC, but I thought they'd be a solid football team, and I was dead wrong.
You know what surprised me the most about it is I feel the same way you do about Bill's resume, so there's no need to debate that. I was really surprised at a guy that I think's really sharp and an organization, because it wasn't just him, being really sharp that was collectively ignorant enough to think they could come to college, and because it was college football, it would be easier than winning in the pros. And that's a big misnomer. Now, if he took the Notre Dame job, the Texas job, the Georgia job, it is easier to win there than it is in the NFL because relative to the baseline of the competition, you have a leg up in terms of resource. But that's not what he inherited. So he came from a world where everyone was pretty well crammed to the middle, and therefore whoever the best tactician is, whoever the best organization builder is, whoever the best X's and O's guy is will win. He came to a world where you're working at a disadvantage and you're looking up at what the baseline is. And at that point, it really doesn't matter if the University of North Carolina has a great tactician. Mario Cristobal just has way better players than you. And to think that that wasn't going to be a much bigger factor, and that's not even to mention all the other mess that went into the hiring process, it boggled my mind that they thought it was going to be that easy.
Yeah, I'm with you. There was almost an arrogance, right? You know, Mike Lombardi, I think, is certainly part of that. And look, like you mentioned Miami, I think the world of Cristobal and what he's brought to the table for that program. And he's been an assistant coach and a head coach for a long time, and I just think he's fantastic. And I watch your show religiously. I know you have Miami winning the championship. Take us through the why.
Yeah, the only doubt I really had about them, probably twofold. One was you lost some special pass rushers. And so I wanted to know, we use the term backfill all the time. I know you don't have a one-to-one backfill that matches Reuben Bain. You probably don't collectively have the pass rush statistical backfill to replace what he and Mesidor did. You probably don't have a Frankie Mauanoa on your roster. I'm more, the Billy Bean Moneyball thing. Well, in the aggregate, what do we add? In the aggregate, what are we? And not that they're moneyballing it at all down there. Or if they are, it's a way different brand of moneyball. I just think the cumulative competitive depth they had there, even last year, was underrated. And I think there are a lot of guys that weren't household names that will become household names by necessity this year. I also really love them at corner. I really love that Corey Heatherman made such an impact year one as a defensive coordinator last year, but people kind of forget it was year one. This is year two with him having that secondary back, him having, I think, plenty good enough of a pass rush, plenty good enough of a run-stopping element on the interior, not to mention going too deep at those positions, but also at my baseline, at my core, I trust the raw talent they have on the offensive line to be developed and coached as best you can at the college level, because the head coach there, not only him, but also his O-line coach are two of the best in the game at doing that. And most importantly, all due respect to Carson Beck, I think they upgraded at quarterback and have a phenomenal running backs room and wide receiver room. And there's just not that area on their team where I circle with a red Sharpie and say, boy, that terrifies me. They don't have it. So I think at their best, they're more dynamic than anyone can be.
I love that, and I'm with you. They don't have what you would perceive on paper before the season a negative, and I'm obsessed with Mario as a head coach. Let me give you my pick to win it all, and I want to, because you have the expertise, so I want to get your take on it. And I'm not, splitting the atom here. Oregon. I've liked Oregon for a while. I love the head coach. I'm obsessed with the quarterback. They've got a lot of returners on defense. These are a couple things that I look for. If they can win the tough games, and I think they can, in that conference, it'll obviously give them experience to win in January. What's your read on Oregon this year?
I got them playing for the national title. So, I mean, I believe in them. I think so you and I both obviously believe in them. Let's try and pick them apart. Let's say if it doesn't work out, why would it not work out? I think the first thing may be, we saw Dante Moore get heated up a few times last year in big games, and it didn't go well. Now, that's most quarterbacks, by the way. Not many quarterbacks are good under that kind of fire. If that's the case, and he's getting heated up a lot, it's probably because that offensive line just never was better than average. And if they're going to have an Achilles heel, that's it. Now, the flip side of that coin is if that offensive line is moderate to good or better, you've got a stud quarterback there. You got a guy that probably would have been a first-round draft pick had he come out last year based on tools alone. And elsewhere on that team, everything you need to win is there. I hear these people say all the time, Dan Lanning can't do this. Oregon can't do that. And on our show, we say all the time, cannot does not equal, or have not does not equal cannot. So he hasn't done it yet. And they've been blown out the last two playoffs that have come to an end emphatically against Ohio State and Indiana. And I just wonder, from a psychological perspective, is that a hurdle for them? And I can't really know that. But I know what would greatly absolve that concern is seeing them in a big game. Let's say they face Notre Dame, they face Texas,
Yeah.
and just 34-21, just put it on them. Then I think that's a team that could feel unstoppable in the playoffs.
I think college football, from a competitive perspective, is in a lot of ways, Josh, the best it's been ever. Where you can honestly pick 6, 7, 10, 12 teams that I think can be in the championship game. And look, then you have, the whole Indiana situation from last year, which to me is the beauty of college football now. So if I told you the 2026 national champion is not Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, Notre Dame, or Texas, who would you bet on and why?
You put Indiana in there, right?
I did not.
Maybe it's just Indiana again. Maybe everyone wastes all spring and summer looking for a reason why it can't happen again. And I went and watched, I was up at like 1 o'clock the other morning watching random Josh Hoover TCU highlights.
Of course.
And I tried to picture that guy having to do it all for TCU in an Indiana uniform, not having to do it all, playing behind a wonderful offensive line, playing with a phenomenal defense that's probably going to ask him to score 24 a game instead of 44 a game. And I thought about the collective DNA, sort of the cultural aspect that it took to achieve the level they played at last year, which I know we all appreciated it in the moment. I think you probably need a decade or so's removal from that to have proper perspective on how special that season was last year. I don't think that just walks out the door once some big time players walk out the door. Now, sure enough, it's hard, really hard to replace it. And even if they had it last year, it really came down to Mendoza making some incredible plays against Penn State, putting his face in the fan against Ohio State, doing the same thing against Miami. So, that's really what these seasons come down to. But if you tell me, the top 3 or 4 aren't going to do it, I'm putting Indiana right in there.
We talked from an Oregon perspective about, okay, we have to see it, right? And I love Oregon. You love Oregon this year. What's your take on Texas? Because for me, look, they might be the most talented team in the country, and I love Sark. There is a part of me, I kind of need to see it. How good, how great could Texas be this year?
They could be the best team in the country. They could win the national championship. At their best, we could be sitting here in December watching them finish a 12-0 regular season, winning the SEC championship game, and we could be saying to ourselves, wow, we really overthought the room. Wow, we suffered from paralysis by analysis of just, it was so clear that roster was right there. Why didn't I pick them? That's them at their best. Now, since we hadn't seen that from them, I think it's totally fair to have the doubts. Look, them facing Georgia 3 times in 2 years and going 0 for 3, and it being for the same reason every time. Georgia did that,
Yep.
and you didn't have an answer for it. Even if it's not Georgia you've got to go through, you'll deal with that against Ohio State, or if it's not them, you'll deal with it against Notre Dame or Indiana. So someone's going to make you be more physical than a supremely physical counterpart. And we haven't seen Texas fit that description. So for all the talk about Arch, for all the talk about Cam Coleman and those running backs they added, and they're incredible defensively. Like, I think they could be a defensive-oriented team if they needed to this year. It still comes down to being more physical in one of those high-level physical matchups. And that is a great unknown until they do it. And I think it's totally fair on the other side of the coin, if you're a Texas fan, to look at it and say, no, 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 no. You better win it this year. You don't get to have this kind of roster. You don't get to invest this much. We don't invest this much emotionally and financially to settle for just making the playoff. I mean, those are lofty expectations, but I think Texas is the only team in the SEC that could reasonably expect a championship or bust type outcome.
Is there a new blood playoff team you have this year, a program outside the usual suspects that you think can make the college football playoffs?
Yeah, it's going to be tight. It's USC. That's the team that I'm rolling the dice on a little bit.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule. It's a young team in some places. We were just looking at their depth. What is it? 5 true freshmen that it looks like they're going to start. But now that's from the #1 overall signing class in the country. Luke Waffle, as an example, is an edge player, 6'5", about 260. That's the kind of player that would play for an Alabama or a Georgia or a Notre Dame. Like that's the kind of guy that would get on the field anywhere. Just so happens he signed with USC. I really worry about them though if they don't handle that Oregon game early and it goes sideways. Um, they got several other games coming up. I mean, they got to go to Penn State not too long after that for the whiteout game. Like they are going to be put through the fire this year. And so if they can come out bloody and battered and scarred, but if they can come out 10-2, they will have earned it. And it will also mean that line of scrimmage play there is finally what it needs to be. And Jaden Mayava in year 3 at quarterback under one of the great quarterback coaches in this country, and Lincoln Riley, really did level up. And if that's the case, then I'm fine rolling the dice on them making the playoff.
Which head coach is on the hottest seats, in your opinion, to start the season?
I almost feel like Mike Norvell should have his own category here at Florida State. I mean,
Fair
that's
enough,
like that.
yes.
Yeah, like you know, I cover this stuff year round, so this is like the 100th time I've had to answer this question, and I almost kind of say, "Oh, you mean beyond Mike?" So the FSU thing, I mean, it could get uncomfortable. It's already uncomfortable. It could get really ugly early because they don't have a backloaded schedule. So they play SMU early. They play Alabama early. They're going to have Miami early enough. I think that they've got like 5 or 6 losable games before Halloween. So if they're going to make a move, they may be making a move really early like some of these schools did last year. Outside of that, and we talked about Belichick already, I'm really interested to watch Wisconsin because Luke Fickell, I've not lost confidence in as a head coach. He's had horrible quarterback injury luck. He did not hire properly at the outset on the offensive side of the ball, and he's paid the price for that. Kind of the inverse of what Lincoln did. Lincoln hired poorly defensively, and he had to course correct. Well, Luke Fickell hired poorly offensively, but I think he's a good coach. And look, if it doesn't go his way this year, he's one of these guys I would look at and say, if he got fired, I'd hire him today. Because he's like the guy who kind of gets too far down the dead-end road and doesn't have enough gas to get back to the main road. If I could just get him back to the main road, if I could hit reset, I'd be totally confident turning my program over to him. It's not like the stuff he did to get Cincinnati to the playoff back in the day, he forgot. It's just he got himself into a little bit of quicksand early there.
I think the Heisman conversation preseason, Josh, is fascinating because I think you got to look at players, obviously, duh, but also teams. And it's a weird conversation. I mean, I think the best player, pound for pound, in college football is playing wide receiver at Ohio State. And to me, that would be my personal favorite for the Heisman Trophy. Oftentimes, it's a quarterback kind of award. Give us your Heisman pick, but also some names to watch when it comes to the Heisman.
Yeah, I'm picking Darian Mensah, who's the quarterback at Miami. So I'm kind of, tying that up with my national championship pick. If I were to go off the beaten path a little bit, back in spring, I was looking at the board, and at the time, Alabama had a quarterback battle going on. So Keelan Russell was, astronomical odds, and I just thought he'd win the job. So that alone made me think there's some value there. So we bet him back in spring, and man, we could cash that one out right now and almost double up our bet total. He is a special player. And they've got a good enough skill set down there around him where, Alabama's going to be in the mix this year. And if you're the quarterback at Alabama, and especially they can do RPO stuff they couldn't last year with Ty, that could be a name that comes from off the radar a little bit to be in the mix.
You can watch Josh Pate's college football show on YouTube and see Josh on ESPN's college football coverage all season long. Don't miss Bussin and Pate on campus. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait for it. Every Friday this season on ESPN. Josh, you're the best, and we appreciate it as always.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.